So, Mr. Siddiqui, what were the main points for you at this edition of the WEF?
If I look at Davos over a 3-year horizon, 3 years ago the theme was resilient dynamism, and what I heard was global leaders coming together and saying we'll make the world together a more resilient place. Last year the theme was reshaping the world, and what I heard was again, we as leaders will help reshape the world together. This year the theme is the new global context, and I didn't hear anything that said we will together do anything. There is something I guess weaker about the togetherness of leaders right now. What I heard was a bit more about we as leaders have a bit of a problem amongst us. We're not coordinating enough, we're not cooperating enough, and frankly we don't trust each other enough, and we need to sort this out.
Et comment est-ce que vous expliquez cette évolution? And how do you explain this change?
I guess one part of the backdrop is that we're not seeing global growth anywhere near what has been trend growth for some time now. We have some growth, but it's below trend, which means that incomes do not compound as quickly as they used to in the past. There are geopolitical fault lines that have also emerged. There are other imbalances, issues of inclusion, inequality, and these have combined together to perhaps form a perception that some people have given up on growth. Stagnation has become a mentality. So when you don't expect the pie to grow, rather than concentrating on the pie growing, perhaps you focus more on how can I slice the pie amongst ourselves. I think it's wrong, and I would like to explain. UBS, for example, published a white paper this week in which my colleagues outline at least 4 transformations that we're going through right now. 2 of them can be major supply side positive thrusts, whether it's the lower cost of energy or new technological advances. So there are sources of growth that are out there. My message is that we should not give up on growth. Stagnation is not destiny. It should not become part of the mindset, and that leaders should get together and keep the focus on doing things cooperatively, whether it's global governance around the cyberspace or how to deal with the consequences of inequality and the problems of inclusion.
Would it be correct would you agree that one of the conclusions of this World Economic Forum, and in general as well, is that the United States are coming back as the growth engine of the world now?
Yes, I would describe it as divergence between the US economy. They have gone through a process where unemployment rate went up to 11% and then now back down to 5.6%. Europe's unemployment today, the Eurozone unemployment today, is 11%, and that is growth is weak. Europe grew at 0.8% last year, expected to grow at 1.2% this year, not hugely strong, and we are talking about, if not deflation, but disinflationary pressures. Inflation is probably going to be 0.2 or thereabouts, although quantitative easing might raise that somewhat. So yes, there is divergence in the performance of the real economy. There is divergence in the actions taken under structural reforms, and there is divergence in the monetary policy stance between the US, where we're expecting to see a rate hike this year, and Europe and Japan, for example, where we're expecting to see loose monetary policy this year.
Now, do you believe that the United States have been focusing on monetary policies while Europe has been focusing on budget policies? Do you believe that the strategy that Europe chose during this crisis was actually less efficient than the American one, and that it would have been more efficient, if possible, to apply a more monetary policy in Europe?
It's not a fair comparison between any country and the European Union. The European Union is a much looser union. It's not, there isn't a fiscal union. They're trying to implement a banking union. They're talking about a capital markets union. So the state of the union is much looser than is the case in the US or Japan or India, for example. So that's the first point. And within that, there are questions about mandate. So what it is that the ECB can do and cannot do. The Court of Justice has ruled that unconventional monetary policy is unconventional, but it's legal under the circumstances. In other countries, you don't ask about the legality of the mandate. So I think what the European Union could do, the political economy is different. However, there is no way to escape structural reforms. Europe needs to do that. Monetary policy, loose money, provides air cover. It buys you time within which you need to engage in bringing the union together, removing some of the blockages, labor reforms, etc., etc. Those need to happen.
What do you get out of a World Economic Forum? And the reason I'm asking this question is because there seems to be a discrepancy with what the WEF says on what, talking about globalization and climate change, etc., and what truly happens. So what do you get out of these events?
You get the coming together of people who are opinion leaders and leaders in various parts of society. It's a multi-stakeholder, multidisciplinary gathering, and that gathering is curated. So there are sessions where people come together to discuss certain topics. The topics are vast, varied, numerous, and they provide for both structured and unstructured dialogue. And if you agree that the fundamental problem right now is one of collective leadership, how do individual leaders coordinate and work together to take us to a higher level of collective leadership, then this sort of exchange and interaction in a safe, non-judgmental sort of a setting is exactly what's required. So I don't see a divergence between what I expected and what I see here.
What would you like to hear or debate or discuss during another World Economic Forum?
I think the world moves as a result of a combination of both macro top-down factors and micro bottom-up factors. I would probably like to see more representation of micro stories, specific circumstances, solutions that have come about at the grassroots level in various parts of the world. It's already being showcased. The forum has something called the Global Shapers, under 30 people who come and talk to us about their localized successes. So I'd like to see a bit more micro compared to macro. And there's probably still a little bit too much emphasis on monetary policy, which is, I guess, because central banks are the source of demand right now, but I'd like to see a bit more about the sources of real growth, what actually are the new ways of conducting economic activity that will result in growth in future.
Et quelles sont pour vous ces nouvelles sources de croissance? And if you had to name these sources of new growth, what would they be?
I mentioned two. Energy is one. I saw a study that said that every $10 drop in the price of oil results in a 0.2% extra growth and a reduction in inflation by about 0.6%. So that is a positive shock. Although, immediately sometimes it might feel negative on sentiment when the price halves in half a year. But energy is a source of positive shock, not just the price of oil, but also sustainable, renewable sources of energy. There's a lot of innovation that's going on over there. And then technology in general. A few years from now, probably 2 years from now, I will be sitting in my driverless car, wearing a wearable device that's checking my biometrics, communicating with my robot at home, asking the robot to print out a smartphone using my 3D printer, use the phone, my high-tech, high-bandwidth internet connection to pay my bills, and save the receipts in a cloud account, and then go charge himself on my renewable energy solar panel. That is the the kind of technology changes that we're seeing. So these are sources of growth. The problem, of course, is these might polarize income distribution, inequality, jobs, inclusion. These are real challenges. These are consequences and implications of overall growth. And we need overall growth, but we also need fair distribution, and that's what the leadership needs to focus on.
Sid, one last question about emerging markets. In the past, we heard a lot about emerging markets. They were like really one of the main topics. We were talking about the BRICS, whether this concept is legitimate or not. I'm not getting into that. But it seems that this year emerging markets were kind of pushed aside, virtually non-existent. What is your view on that?
That's true. Emerging markets have been sidelined in many ways, which means that there hasn't been anything exciting, but there hasn't been anything catastrophic either. It's just been a fairly boring movie in many ways. In the emerging markets world, you have some countries that are going through terms of trade deterioration, mainly because the commodity that they used to sell, typically one commodity, oil in some cases, the price of that has dropped, and they need new engines of growth. In other cases, they have strong balance sheets, they have strong reserves, but they need, again, new engines of growth because, as we started by saying, world growth is below trend. World trade is also not growing as much as it used to, and the relationship between world trade and emerging markets income is also a lot weaker right now. So that's what's happening.